The NFL is built on legends, records, and unforgettable moments. But behind the bright lights and roaring crowds, there's a side of the league that rarely makes the highlight reels. A side filled with crime, violence, and tragedy. Stories so dark that even ESPN won't touch them. But what are those stories, and how bad are they? Well, let's talk about that. Henry Ruggs, a life and career destroyed in seconds. Let's start with a story that shook the NFL to its core. Henry Ruggs. If you followed college football or the early days of his NFL career, you'd know Ruggs wasn't just any player. He was the fastest man in his draft class, clocking a 4.27-second 40-yard dash. A first-round pick by the Las Vegas Raiders in 2020, the expectations were massive. This was supposed to be the guy to bring the Raiders' offense to life with his deep threat speed. But all that potential, every bit of it, vanished on a single night in November 2021. Ruggs was driving his Corvette at an insane speed, 156 miles per hour. He was twice the legal alcohol limit, with his girlfriend in the passenger seat. Then it happened. He crashed into the back of a Toyota RAV4, causing it to burst into flames. Inside that car was a 23-year-old woman named Tina Tintor, along with her dog. She was trapped and burned alive. He eventually pleaded guilty to DUI resulting in death and reckless driving. He was sentenced to 3 to 10 years in prison. And even that sentence sparked public outrage. People asked, how does someone who kills another human while drunk driving get potentially just 3 years? But this wasn't the first time an NFL player killed someone while driving drunk. Before Ruggs, there was Dante Stallworth, and his story is just as disturbing. Dante Stallworth, a death, a sentence, and a second chance. He didn't deserve. Dante Stallworth was a respected NFL wide receiver. He played for multiple teams like the Saints, Eagles, and Patriots. By 2009, he was still very much in the league, still talented, still productive. But then, one morning in Miami changed everything. Stallworth had been out drinking at a nightclub. Hours later, still with alcohol in his system, he got behind the wheel. As he drove home, he struck a man named Mario Reyes, who was simply trying to cross the street to catch a bus after his shift. Reyes died on the scene. Now here's the part that leaves a sour taste. Stallworth was charged with DUI manslaughter, but instead of a harsh prison sentence, he got 30 days in jail. 30 days for taking a life. In the end, he served just 24 days. That's less than a month. The justification? Stallworth had a clean record, showed remorse, and reached a financial settlement with the victim's family. Then the NFL let him back in. Stallworth returned to the league, played again like nothing had happened. He became the prime example of how fame, money, and status can bend the justice system. A life lost, and yet the league, the courts, they moved on quickly. But some players don't just kill by accident or negligence. Some actively prey on others. And that brings us to Darren Sharper, a man who lived 2 lives, one on the field and one as a predator. Darren Sharper, Super Bowl champion by day, serial rapist by night. Darren Sharper's NFL resume was impressive. 5-time Pro Bowler, Super Bowl champion with the New Orleans Saints, and for a while, a respected voice in sports media. He was supposed to be a role model, the kind of player you show your kids as an example of success after football. But behind the charisma and TV appearances was a man committing some of the most vile crimes imaginable. Sharper wasn't just a rapist, he was a serial rapist. His pattern was disturbingly calculated. While traveling city to city, he'd drug women, rendering them unconscious, and then assault them. This wasn't an isolated incident. He was accused and later confessed to doing this across multiple states, including California, Arizona, Louisiana, and Nevada. The investigation revealed that he had been committing these crimes while working as an analyst on the NFL Network. Think about that. While we watched him break down defenses on TV, he was living a double life, violating women and leaving a trail of trauma. Sharper was eventually sentenced to 18 years in prison after pleading guilty. But no sentence can undo the damage, the broken lives, the betrayal of trust. The NFL tried to distance itself from the scandal, but the truth was glaring. A celebrated athlete turned into a monster, hiding in plain sight. And yet, for all its horror, Sharper's story doesn't even touch the cultural shock of what O.J. Simpson became. His story wasn't just criminal. It became the most publicized trial in modern history. O.J. Simpson, the icon who became a symbol of infamy. There's no way to talk about dark NFL stories without mentioning O.J. Simpson. Before the trials, before the infamy, O.J. was football royalty. He won the Heisman Trophy, was a 6-time Pro Bowler, rushed for over 2,000 yards in a single season, the first to ever do it. He was beloved, charismatic, a movie star, and for many, the face of black success in America. Then came June 1994. Nicole Brown Simpson and her friend Ron Goldman were brutally murdered. The evidence pointed overwhelmingly to O.J. OJ. Blood samples, a glove at his home, a history of domestic violence. But when the police came for him, we got the infamous white Bronco chase, broadcast live to millions. What followed was the trial of the century, a media circus filled with racial tension, legal theatrics, and the infamous phrase, "If it doesn't fit, you must acquit." Despite the mountain of evidence, Simpson was found not guilty, though later found liable for the deaths in civil court. But O.J., quote, "S descent didn't stop there. In 2007, he was arrested for armed robbery and kidnapping in Las Vegas, trying to recover his own sports memorabilia at gunpoint. This time, he wasn't getting away. He was sentenced to 33 years in prison, served 9, and was released on parole in 2017. O.J. Simpson went from the pinnacle of American sports to the most infamous name in both sports and criminal history. No other player's downfall has been so publicly dissected, debated, and remembered. But if O.J.'s violence surfaced after his career, Aaron Hernandez's story is different. His violent spiral unfolded while he was still catching touchdowns for the Patriots, and that's where we go next. But before we talk about that, please hit the subscribe button. Thank you. Aaron Hernandez, a killer hiding in plain sight. When the New England Patriots drafted Aaron Hernandez in 2010, they knew they were taking a risk. There were already whispers about his off-field behavior, gang connections, erratic behavior, even failed drug tests at the University of Florida. But his talent was undeniable. Alongside Rob Gronkowski, Hernandez formed one of the most dangerous tight end duos the NFL had ever seen. On the field, he was electrifying, athletic, agile, and relentless. Off the field, though, it was a different world. Hernandez wasn't just living a double life, he was trapped in one. And that duality exploded in 2013 when he was arrested for the murder of Odin Lloyd, a semi-pro football player and acquaintance. The evidence was staggering. Surveillance footage, text messages, ballistic tests. It painted a clear picture. Hernandez lured Lloyd to an industrial park and executed him, all while having a fiancée and a newborn daughter at home, and a $40 million NFL contract in his pocket. But the investigation didn't stop there. Hernandez was later linked to a 2012 double homicide in Boston, a drive-by shooting that killed 2 men over a spilled drink at a nightclub. He was convicted of Lloyd's murder and sentenced to life in prison without parole. Yet, in 2017, days after being acquitted in the double homicide case, he was found dead in his prison cell. Suicide by hanging. He was 27 years old. The story didn't end with his death. Post-mortem examinations revealed Hernandez had severe chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE, the kind of brain damage usually seen in elderly players who took years of hits. Many wondered if his violent tendencies were linked to his brain condition. But others argued this was a man conditioned by his environment, his choices, and his inability to escape violence. Hernandez's life was a Greek tragedy in modern form. Brilliant talent, squandered by a life of crime and self-destruction. But while Hernandez turned to murder, others in the league walked a different criminal path, one paved with drugs, deception, and betrayal. And that leads us to Sam Hurd. Sam Hurd, the wide receiver who tried to become a drug kingpin. If you heard Sam Hurd's name during his NFL days, it was usually in passing. An undrafted wide receiver, he carved out a solid career with the Dallas Cowboys and later with the Chicago Bears. He wasn't a star, but he was respected, quiet, hardworking, the kind of player you didn't expect to see on the news for the wrong reason. But what Hurd was doing off the field was something straight out of a crime drama. While catching passes on Sundays during the week, he was deep in discussions about building a drug empire. Hurd wanted to become a wholesale drug trafficker, capable of moving kilograms of cocaine and marijuana, not in street corner quantities, but massive distribution-level loads. The FBI was already onto him. In 2011, they set up an undercover sting operation. Hurd met with agents posing as drug dealers in a Chicago steakhouse. That's where he casually agreed to buy 5 to 10 kilograms of cocaine weekly, worth millions of dollars. He even said he could sell it effortlessly within the NFL and beyond, hinting at other players being involved, though no others were ever charged. He was arrested on the spot, and it became national news. Hurd pleaded guilty to conspiracy to possess with the intent to distribute large amounts of drugs. He was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. For many, it was mind-boggling. How does a player with $1 million salary risk everything to become a drug trafficker? The answers remain murky, but what's clear is that Hurd's ambition for power and wealth went far beyond football, and it destroyed his life. But while Hurd trafficked drugs, some NFL players trafficked violence. And in the NFL, the conversation around domestic violence is both disturbing and unresolved, especially when you talk about Tyreek Hill and Kareem Hunt. Tyreek Hill and Kareem Hunt, the NFL's double standard on domestic violence. Tyreek Hill and Kareem Hunt are two names that come up often when we talk about domestic violence in the NFL, not just because of their actions, but because of the league's inconsistent handling of such cases. Let's start with Tyreek Hill. In 2014, during his college days days at Oklahoma State, Hill was arrested for assaulting his pregnant girlfriend. He punched her in the stomach, choked her, and threw her around. Details that are horrifying no matter how you read them. He pleaded guilty to domestic assault and battery, received probation, and was dismissed from the team. Most thought that would end his NFL dreams, but no. The Kansas City Chiefs drafted him in the 5th round in 2016. And Hill? He became one of the most explosive wide receivers in the league. Then in 2019, another scandal surfaced. There were allegations of child abuse involving Hill's son, who suffered a broken arm. A recording leaked where Hill threatened his partner, saying, "You should be terrified of me too." The case was eventually closed without charges, but the NFL, again, issued no suspension. Hill kept playing, kept winning. Now, Kareem Hunt. In 2018, TMZ released a video showing Hunt shoving and kicking a woman in a hotel hallway. The Chiefs immediately released him, a move that shocked many because of how swiftly they acted. But it didn't take long for Hunt to get a second chance. The Cleveland Browns signed him months later, and just like that, his career resumed. Both cases reignited the debate. Why does the NFL continue to reward talent over accountability? Why are these players back on the field while their victims live with trauma? The league claims to have policies, but the enforcement is inconsistent at best. And for every case like Hill or Hunt, there are players whose personal struggles consume them entirely. Not just violence, but addiction. One of those was Darrell Russell, a man who had everything and lost it all to substance abuse. And when you look at all these stories, Ruggs, Stallworth, Sharper, OJ, Hernandez, Hurd, Hill, Hunt, a bigger question looms. Is this just a coincidence of bad individuals? Or is there something deeper, something systemic in the culture of the NFL? Well, let me know what you think in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and also check out our last 2 videos. Thank you.